Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ask Leah on Facebook Live. Surprise, it is Wednesday night, not Thursday night. But as I've mentioned through the week, I'm popping in to do our live cross tonight because tomorrow night I'm heading down to Melbourne for an event I'm really excited about. I'm going down to the Resilience Project in Melbourne with some friends, and I'm really excited for that for a number of reasons, but particularly because tomorrow is actually RUOK Day, a day where we're encouraged to have meaningful conversations with those around us to help prevent suicide. And as most of you who follow me know, I am passionate about mental health advocacy. I'm a volunteer speaker for Beyond Blue. I'll be speaking about Are You OK Day tomorrow morning at 6:20 a.m. for the early birds on Gippsland FM. And I will also then be running the Happiness Choice, How to Create a Life You Love, one of my workshops for local government staff. So it's a big day tomorrow dedicated to mental health, and that's why I'm popping in to do Facebook Live tonight. Hello, Tracy. I've got 3 questions to answer tonight that have come in through the week, and a really big thank you to those of you who have sent me your questions. 2 of the questions tonight relate to going for new jobs, and the 3rd one involves having difficult conversations. So let's jump straight into that. The first question tonight is a bit of a tricky one. When should you tell your boss you're going to leave a job? Do you do it when you have a new job or when you're thinking about leaving? And this is a really good question. Hi, Kerry. This is a really good question, and one for which there is actually no exactly right answer, and it depends on a few things how you go about this. So first of all, it depends why you're thinking about leaving the job. If you actually quite enjoy your job and would stay if you had more responsibility or some increased tasks, or maybe it's a pay issue, maybe you'd like higher pay, I really encourage you to have a conversation about those things before you look at going for another job. You know, I see this quite a bit. People say, oh, we left, hi Cal, we left the job because my old job didn't pay enough. And they didn't actually try to negotiate a wage first. Now, I'm not saying pay negotiations always work, particularly in government or different workplaces. Sometimes your bands are really set, but have a conversation if it is a possibility of staying. If you do decide to go in and have a conversation about pay, go in prepared. Do not just walk in and say, hey, I would like a pay rise, because your boss is probably likely to say, hey, I would like $1 million, and you're not going to get very far. But if you've done that research, if you know what people in similar positions are getting paid, if you can document the higher duties that you've been doing regularly over a consistent period that are actually in a band above what you're being paid at, you know, if you can go armed with that knowledge and be able to put that forward, you never know, you might get that pay rise that you're after. So I'd do that first. However, if the issue is you do want to leave that employer, you want to leave the job, you know, you're not going to negotiate pay because you've just had enough actually, and you don't want to be there anymore. I would really advise not telling them you're leaving until you have secured another job. And when I say secured another job, I mean you've signed contracts, you have negotiated the pay at the other job. And I know a lot of people are scared of having pay discussions, but negotiating pay is absolutely okay. And like I said, there are ways to do that that make it not scary, and it really is about doing your research and your preparation first. But yeah, so secure the other job before you tell them that you're leaving, because the last thing you want to do is tell your current boss that you're leaving, then for whatever reason have this other job fall through, and then kind of be in a position where, one, you might have given notice and they say, well, bad luck, you're gone. Or maybe you just told them that you were applying for other jobs and you've got this job and you haven't given formal notice, but then you've got this awkward situation going forward. I have had this happen myself, so I do speak from experience. I used a boss for a referee once, and I thought it would be all okay. We got on really well. She was happy to be a referee for me, but she was under pressure herself, and the fact that I was leaving put some stress on her, and it made it not a great environment for a few weeks there. So hold off, give them as much notice as you can, absolutely. Give them as much notice as you can, but once you've decided once you've already secured that other job. The second question that came through is another one about interviews, actually. It's a really good question. Hi, Sab. How do you ask about an organisation's work culture and how they support staff in a job interview? And the background to this question is I've had a bullying experience that affected my work performance and my well-being, and I don't want to be in that situation again. An interview is a way of checking if this business is a good fit for me, and absolutely, I 100% agree with that. But this person said, I want to check that they're a good fit for me, but I don't want to come across as if I'm carrying, a lot of issues. And, they've tried this before. In their last interview, they did ask a question about how that organisation supports staff, and it didn't go down very well. So, again, a few points with this one. Like interviewees, when you are in a job interview, the people doing the interview are on their best behaviour usually as well. So the challenge you have is when you ask a question about how they support staff or behave in difficult situations, if you did ask that question, and I wouldn't encourage you to, they're probably not going to tell you the truth anyway. So it's not going to give you the value that you would hope for. What you absolutely can ask, though, a lot of organisations these days are really big on values, which is awesome if they live their values, and a much smaller portion of organisations actually live in alignment with their values, which is disappointing. It's one thing to have this nice, shiny values, mission, vision statement up on the wall, but if you don't actually live them, then really it is just a nice shiny piece of paper. How can you work out if they live their values? You can really do some behavioural questioning of your own. So most interviews are behavioural these days. They ask you some really specific questions at the end when they say to you, hey, do you have any questions for us? It might be that you say something along the lines of, I'm a really value-driven person, and I love the fact that through the position description and on your website, you make it really clear that you have strong values that you live by as an organisation. I'm wondering if you could please give me an example of how you live those values in practice in the organisation. So make them do more than just tell you what their values are. If one of their values is respect, it's asking them, okay, that's great. I really value respect as well. Can you tell me about how the organisation demonstrates respect as a value in practice within the organisation? So make it a positive statement, say it with confidence as if, yes, this aligns, and get the information that way. The other thing I really encourage you to do, though, is use your network. If you know people who work within this organisation, have a chat to them on the side, outside of the interview, speak to them, get that background idea of what they're like to work for, because oftentimes you're going to get, or actually not even oftentimes, all the time, you're going to get a much clearer picture through those conversations than you will in a job interview. Again, remember, folks, if you do have a question while we're talking tonight, I am happy to have a crack at answering that. But we will go on to the third question that came through this week, which is how do you find the confidence, or how do you best approach a conversation when you're dreading it? So the example was, it might be about a controversial topic or a discussion with someone that is really important, but you've been putting it off because you know it's important and you want to get your argument or point across, and you're not so confident in doing so. And, you know, you walk away afterwards going, damn it, that's not what I wanted to say. I actually have a 5-step model for communication. It's what I've written my book about, which is in the last stages of the second draft at the moment and heading off to my editor at the end of this month. It's called Soft is the New Hard, the book, and the model is called the 5 C's of communication. And this really lays the foundation before you go and have a difficult conversation and helps you communicate under pressure. The first C is choice. Choice about who you are as a person, choice to take responsibility for your communication, you know, that goes to your character. So in this situation, if it's a difficult conversation, you'd be really asking yourself, you know, who am I? Do I need to have this conversation right? I'm going to do that in a respectful way that's true to my values, because that's who I am, okay? It's about emotional health and awareness. The second point, the second C, is control. Control does come into your emotional intelligence. Can you regulate your emotions? A great way of regulating your emotions is to put a pause between your reaction and your response. So, you know, someone says something and you go to fire up, taking a breath, taking that moment, even saying, you know, okay, give me a moment to think about that before you respond. You're more likely to have a considered response. Control also over what you can control and letting the rest go. So if you're having a difficult conversation with someone, you're poles apart on your opinion. A lot of the time we get really wrapped up in how the other person responds, or, you know, if they're going to get upset or angry, or how it's going to play out. And here's the thing, you've got no control over other people. You've only got control over you. So your aim is to have the conversation in the best, most kind, considerate way you can, but then you've got to let the chips fall as they may. The third C is consideration. So why are you having this conversation? Do you actually need to have it? That is a question to ask yourself here. Do you need to have the conversation? And if you do, how do you have it in the best way to get you the result that you want? So, you know, consider the other person, put yourself in their shoes, have some empathy, you know, consider the best time to have the conversation. If it's a really difficult conversation where the other person might feel really defensive, it might be something you do one-on-one in private. If you're concerned that, hey, they might actually blow up and it might get really out of hand one-on-one, perhaps you're having someone else as a witness for that conversation as well. So consideration is key. The fourth C, this is where the confidence comes in, but it's not about confidence. It's actually courage. Courage gives you confidence. Courage is about being brave. You don't have to be the confident extrovert to be brave, okay? But you do have to be courageous to have these conversations sometimes. You really have to, you know, put your big boy or girl knickers on and be brave. And the fifth step is the actual communication. So often we jump to that point. We start the conversation and then we wonder why it blows up in our face, because we haven't done the thinking first. We haven't thought about our key messages. We haven't thought about the facts. And that's what you've got to do here. Difficult conversations, you need to take the emotion out of it. So I really encourage you to sit down with a pen and paper, do some dot points about what you actually want to say. Then those first 4 or 5 dot points are probably all your emotional baggage. Push them to the side. Push them to the side and focus on the facts as much as you can. You'll have a much better result if you do that. So again, the 5 C's: 5 C's of communication: choice about your character and who you want to be in this conversation; control, so this is your emotional intelligence, taking that time to really be on top of your emotions. So don't go into this difficult conversation when you're feeling really upset and emotional yourself. Consideration, how do you go about having it? What's the best approach? Courage, getting really brave, even if you're scared, even if your voice shakes. If this is something that you've decided you have to do it. And then at the end, communication. And what I often say to people is, if there's a conversation you've been dreading, have it early. It seems counterintuitive, but don't put those conversations off, because when you put it off, conflict just grows. It doesn't disappear. So have the conversation early when it's uncomfortable, but when it's not a major issue. All right. That's it for me tonight. If there's no other questions, if you don't want to ask them live, do send them through to me through the week. Like I said, tomorrow, Are You OK Day, a day I am really passionate about supporting. Mental health is just as valid as physical health, and mental illness is just as valid as physical illness. It's not something to be ashamed or embarrassed about. It's something that there is help out there for. So ask the question, and like I said at the start, ask it of other people, but also ask it of yourself. How are you tracking? Are you actually okay? Or, maybe you're not. And it's okay not to be okay. The great way of having this conversation is, 1, to ask someone if they're okay; 2, to listen to what they say and listen non-judgmentally. Third point, and these points come from the Are You OK organisation themselves. Third point is to encourage them to take action and seek help. They might be in a really dark place, but seeking help is always that option that they can take. And the 4th step is check in. So I will be enjoying a big day dedicated to mental health tomorrow. Like I said, I am a volunteer speaker for Beyond Blue. I love my work in that space, and I'm really looking forward to a cracking day and the Resilience Project down in Melbourne tomorrow night. Have a great week, everyone. Next week on Ask Leah, I will be back on Thursday night, and I hope you tune in there. Cheers.